What's going on, Tamers? It's me, guy who made the mistake of going to boxing and now I cannot move any part of my body at all. That's just a real roundabout way of saying that I'm not going to be very animated today just because right now existence is pain. Moving on from that existential crisis though, we are in our 9th week of the BT15 Exceed Apocalypse meta over here in Japan and Asia. And last week, good news, we got the release of the new Terriermon and Lopmon Advanced deck. And while most of the Advanced deck was green focused, there was a bit of support for potential things like Machine Dramon and the machines out there, as well as things like Vmon Rush or Vmon Armor. With that said, let's take a look at some of the event results, a couple of key takeaways, and a closer look at some of the decks I topped over the course of the past week. So diving into the results, it's probably no surprise that Terriermon is chilling with some of the strongest decks in the meta right now. And that might be because of just shiny new toy syndrome. I mean, it's not hard to understand. Me see new card, me use new card. Card game caveman brain at the simplest level. It's pretty apparent to most folks that the power of the new level 3s, Terriermon, Lopmon, as well as the Double Typhoon option card are really strong. Also, the Rapidmon and the Mega Gargomon Ace are also pretty incredible as well, and so it'll be interesting to see within the coming weeks if this deck can stay at this position. If you watched last week's video, then you probably remember me mentioning that Leviamon put up some pretty good stats, pretty good numbers these past couple weeks, and that trend is going to continue this week as well. In fact, it had the most wins over the course of the week of any deck. And after playing against my friend's Leviamon deck, I can kind of understand the hype behind this. I only found out this week that Leviamon X Antibody can Digivolve from the trash over any Digimon or any purple Digimon that has X Antibody in its traits, which is pretty incredible to be honest. Also, it's been a couple of weeks since the nerfs happened with the updated restricted list and ban lists, and we haven't really talked about a Pokemon that much. I mean, the deck was strong before, and I think most folks expected the deck to get its kneecaps blown out, but that wasn't the case. They got nerfed a little bit. But there is a really cool little tech that I want to show off this week that I thought was super interesting and kind of surprised nobody thought of it earlier. Outside of the results from things like Terriermon and Leviamon though, not much has really changed. One other thing that I do want to show off is the flexibility of the new Terriermon and Lopmon cards, and we're going to take a look at a Leopardmon deck that used some of those to its advantage. So the first deck we're going to take a look at is going to, of course, be Terriermon and Lopmon, and this is probably the most standard version of the deck outside of the pure advanced deck that I've seen so far. And the cool thing is that if you pick up 2 advanced decks, and you can almost build this entire thing with just that. But the game plan here is pretty straightforward and pretty similar to the advanced deck as well, using the power of the Terriermon and Lopmon cards to either give Digimon Alliance as well as play Digimon or Tamers for really cheap cost during the turn. And then you want to go into your Rapidmons here or your Gargomon. Gargomon in this case having jamming, so he can keep swinging turn by turn. And then if he has Alliance, he gets 2 security checks per attack. You can keep control of the board using the level 4 Rapidmons here, being able to give your opponent's Digimon minus DP for the turn, as well as some of their security as well. I think for a lot of people, one of the points of contention for this deck are the Tamers. It's really hard to know what to put in because there's a lot of green Tamers that are really good in the game right now. I think some folks wanted to try out Mimi. It looks like this guy opted to go with 4 copies of Willis. Willis is nice because he lets you hatch an egg, but he also gives you that turn over turn effect where you can reduce Digivolve costs by resting him whenever you go into a Gargomon or a Rapidmon. Also, the Digi Eggs have been replaced from the ones that are included in the advanced deck, and this one they're going with the EX5 Nyatomon, who just has the effect, like many of the other Digimon in this deck, like level 4s and 5, they have a similar effect where if he's rested on all turns, he just gets plus 1000 DP. Also, it's a little hard to see here, but these 2 cards in the top are, the first one is Antilamon. This is the one that has Alliance and can bring back Digimon from the trash. And the next card over is going to be the Black Mega Gargomon card from EX4 as well. And with the prevalence of purple decks running around right now, it's just a really good idea to include 2 copies of the Merciful Mode in the deck. This is a really small thing, but it's something that I appreciate about the point in the game's lifespan that we're at. Before, it felt like training cards are kind of mandatory for in every deck, but now it's good to see them actually fighting for space with other really good option cards, in this case the Double Typhoon. Overall, just a really flexible deck. If you're looking for like a base to start from for Terriermon, this is probably a good one to start with. Also, if you're looking for some gameplay tips on how the deck works or how the deck runs, I did an entire video on Terriermon and Lopmon's advanced deck, and you can take a look at that on the channel as well. Oh yeah, one last thing. Mega Gargomon Ace is a demon. This card is horrifying. Stopping your opponent's Digimon from being able to Digivolve is incredibly annoying. It happened to me on Wednesday at Locals, just playing a couple of casual games, and my god, did that card really just like throw a huge wrench in my plans. Another deck I want to show off is going to be this Leopardmon deck that also uses some of the new Terriermon and Lopmon cards as well. The Advanced Deck Terriermon alongside the BT3 Floodgate Terriermon are a great combination here, considering you do run a couple copies of the Rapidmon. Terriermon here really does a lot of work being able to choke your opponent out at less than 3 memory by either playing a Floodgate and giving them 1, or getting up a Tamer and giving them 2. You'll notice the deck doesn't actually have a lot of level 3s or level 4s. It seems like they're solely focused on getting to the level 5s and 6s very, very quickly, and then keeping that steamrolling pressure turn after turn using the Leopardmon and Leopardmon X antibody. Looking at the level 5s, it's a lot of the cards that we've seen traditionally in Leopardmon in the past, and honestly, I am a little bit surprised we don't see the level 5 Rapidmon included in the advanced deck here, just because it has such a great effect, being able to de-digivolve on play, and if you have a green Terror on the board, it's basically indestructible by your opponent's effects for a turn. That makes your opponent always worried about attacking, because you could have that Mega Gargomon Ace at any time, and they can't just wipe it off the board. Another potential pain point for this deck I think might be card draw, especially in the early game, where you notice that none of the level 3s have any draw power, and not many other cards have draw power until you like the level 5s. That means you're really going to be relying on the training cards as well as your Gummimon in the early game to get cards in hand. And being a Leopardmon fan myself, it is really cool to see the flexibility of the Terriermon cards helping this deck. And the last deck that I want to take a look at is going to be Apocalymon. Now, if you've been watching this channel, then you probably know how this deck already operates, so I'm going to spare you all of that. This deck was actually built by a really strong player by the name of Misao, one of the more prominent players in all of Japan. He has some pretty good results for large-scale tournaments in the past, and what I really love about this build is that he includes a couple copies of Beelstar in the deck. And honestly, when we're talking about a deck that's as flexible as Apocalymon in its base form, adding a Beelstarmon like opens up like another like dimension of possibilities for this deck. In this case, you see him using Beelstar alongside things like Tidal Wave and the Rival's Barrage. The Tidal Wave tech here is really cool. Where most Apocalymon decks have to win by decking your opponent out, this deck has another option in the use of Tidal Wave. Imagine a scenario where you have an Apocalymon on the board and you have a couple of sources and you have something in raising. Imagine into the turn comes, you can slot the Beelstarmon up under your Apocalymon, and then the Beelstar's on play effect lets you pull a 7-cost option from the trash, in this case being Tidal Wave. You play the Tidal Wave immediately because that's also part of the on-play effect, and then you can drop 2 Digimon from its sources onto the board. That means the following turn, you have 4 swings, 3 that are already on board, plus the one from raising, and in most cases, that's just GG's. Not to mention the insane disruption potential for the Tidal Wave here, allowing you to get the on-play effects of your Digimon, so any of the Dark Masters effects that could be useful at that time, you can just drop on the board and get those immediately. All in all, a really smart strategy, especially for dealing with the mirror, as well as just putting a ton of pressure on any other deck at all times. With that, we're going to bring the Week 9 meta report for BT15 to a close. I said it before, but I think it bears repeating. The new Terriermon cards from the advanced deck are incredibly flexible, and I'm really excited to see how people put those to use in other decks. For example, I didn't get to show it off today, but I saw earlier this week, folks are trying out things like Terriermon and Leomon because the colors for both those decks are so similar. So hopefully the next week we'll get to see some of those decks top as well. Also, I recently started up channel memberships, and I just want to extend a heartfelt thank you to the folks who become channel members thus far. I'm sure that everybody knows that I'm a big proponent of supporting people who support your communities, and I do appreciate your guys' support. Also, if you don't know, I have a Discord server, and in that server there is a specific channel for channel members only, where you guys can help me decide some of the direction for my content, so please hop in there and help me out with some of the polls that I'm doing. Anyways, folks, my entire body is in excruciating pain, so I'm going to get out of here. Before you get out of here, do me a favor and hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care.